Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to talk about protecting your business and your bottom line. So, the specific subject matter, I know this is going to be something that you're going to be really excited about. It's workers' comp. Okay. Workers' comp is required in the majority of all states. It's the law. There are a couple of states, if you're wondering, that don't actually require those. But to take on that type of liability would be absolutely crazy. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about how this directly impacts your labor costs. So let's get into it. So a lot of times what people don't realize, if they don't really study it well, is that, workers' comp it's a labor cost, right? You have to have it. It's a percentage of payroll, and it's also based on the type of work that your employees are doing. So, if they're just in the office, there's a specific 4-digit code for that. If they're out driving a truck or they're in the construction business, there's different classifications for that as well. So, they're usually a 4-digit classification code. It's very specific. Yes, it's very, common. So like it's pretty easy to identify what a truck driver does and what that code's going to be. But, there's some other codes that are kind of broken out there. But those tend to be like trucking or construction or roofing or anything that in even some cases, some type of manufacturing. Those codes can be, quite expensive. So it's going to be a cost of doing business. So for every dollar you pay, you could be paying 25 cents over and above, or 25% of that, right, above your payroll. So it can get quite expensive. So not only do you have this classification of duties and different price points, right, for those classes, you actually have what we call an X mod, or in some states they call it E mod. So it's a modifier. So what it is everybody starts at 100. That's par, right? So that's even. But if your history, meaning that you have a lot of claims, is not so good, right, then that modifier goes up, which means that if you have, a higher mod, that means you're going to be paying more. But on the flip side, if you do really well, meaning that you don't have a lot of claims, then your mod is going to go down, which means that you're going to get a discount on your premium. And I will tell you that is way better to be on that side of the coin than to have a high X mod. Because when you do have high X mods, not only do you have higher premiums, it makes it really hard to shop sometimes. And by the way, it does put you on the radar, for inspections. And we all know what that means. You don't want somebody coming in and having to do an inspection because you had some bad claims, which means that, they're going to be looking at your facility, looking at how you operate your business, ask a lot of questions, and it can be a whole lot of just not a lot of fun at all. So one of the things that we always talk about is that it's not uncommon, to get yourself in that type of situation, because accidents do happen, but it does take a while, for claims to fall off. And if your X mod is really high, then that's just going to make it more expensive for you to do business, which ultimately is going to eat into your profit. Because I'm going to tell you one thing that I've learned, as I've been doing this for 15 years, when I'm talking to most employers, when their workers' comp premiums go up, it's really hard to pass those off to their customers, because there's not a whole lot of sympathy when that happens. And we just want to make sure that there are good strategies that you can follow to help you, fix that situation, which I've done for several companies by just evaluating the type of service or the type of vendor relationship or just what they're doing internally, and developing strategy, to help make it so they don't run into these issues where they have a lot of claims. So let's talk about that. I mean, definitely when you're thinking about shopping for workers' comp, you want to, make sure that you're using a competent broker, but ultimately you're looking for somebody who's going to be able to tell the whole story, right? There's always more to the story. And yes, there might be situations where it's just dumb luck. It was a dumb accident. It was something that, just happened. Somebody made a mistake. That can happen. It's not an uncommon thing. But if you're in a situation where you're having multiple claims, per year, which we call frequency, then, that's something you need to pay attention to. I mean, making sure that you're operating safely. I mean, that's number one, right? Everybody wants to do that. Nobody wants to go out there and just, be irresponsible and not pay attention. And nobody likes it, when you have people get hurt on the job. So we want to make sure that we want to avoid that and take steps to make sure that everybody's dialed in. But I will say that there are extenuating circumstances or circumstances that, can be corrected that your broker should know so that when they're actually talking on your behalf and negotiating with a carrier, a potential vendor, that's evaluating your business to see if they want to give you that insurance, to see if they can actually negotiate that well on your behalf and maybe just kind of give them a little bit of insight of not only what happened, but most importantly, what you did to correct the situation. So you're going to try to prevent it from happening again. And that really takes a lot of insight and work. And sometimes you have to put a little extra effort, but there's a lot of people that find themselves in trouble that just keeps exponentially getting worse because they're not doing these corrective measures or they don't actually look at it and try to solve the problem. But a good broker can really address those things. And a lot of times if you find somebody, that does a good job like we do for our customers, we want to make sure that we're telling the underwriters the whole story, laying out a good plan on how we're going to correct the problem, and also, showing them good performance, over the policy period, as well as year in and year out to make sure that we're doing everything that we can, to avoid unsafe situations, but making sure that you're doing a better job of showing them why you're a good risk. Everybody makes mistakes. People find themselves getting in trouble all the time, but I will say that it can really shrink your profit margin. And, having a high mod or having a higher workers' comp cost is definitely something that you don't want to have to deal with year in and year out, especially when you're trying to streamline your business as best you can. So a lot of times, it's good when you're interviewing a broker not to just go, are you going to get me the cheapest rate? Well, hey, that's a given. But what else are they going to bring to the table? Are they going to sit with you and really identify a really good strategy to basically keep you on that other side of that mod, right? You don't want to have a high X mod. You want to have a low X mod, and that can really improve your business significantly and save you money for a long time. So I'll give you one example of a company that I work with. I've worked with them for a number of years now. And when I met with them, they were basically having to pay twice as much. So whatever their base rate was, they had to pay double because they had a really bad X mod. And what had happened is there was a series of claims that continued on through the whole process, and it was making it very expensive to operate. And if you could imagine, as they're continuing to do business, knowing that they had this huge workers' comp expense, it was very frustrating, and they weren't able to raise their prices to their customers. So they had to kind of eat it and just make less money over the years and try to figure it out. So one of the things that we did is we did pair them out with a carrier that had a very organized way of helping out with safety and claims management and really going through that whole process with this company. And over the years, we've seen that XMod go from double, right, which was normal, all the way into what we call a credit. And they're actually 40% below where their XMod needs to be. So they're paying a fraction of what they did when they first had to sign up with us. But the good news is that they've been able to maintain this, which does go to show for many years that if you do the right things and you're proactive, that you can stay extremely competitive in your business. So once again, just to leave it in, if you have higher profit, right, you're going to be able to compete better. And ultimately, that is a cost that you need to pay attention to, especially if you're in an industry where workers' comp can be very expensive. So if you want to learn more, I highly recommend you DM me or just comment if there's a question. If are watching the podcast on YouTube, drop a comment. And you can find me on LinkedIn at Charles Ernst. On YouTube, we're Hey Charles Biz. And on Instagram, Hey Charles 77. Thank you for listening. Talk to you next time.